Well, joining us in the studio is policy analyst Sijibomi Adebiyi Bennett. Good morning. It's good to see you again.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
And convener campaign for dignity in governance, Razaq Olokoba. Good morning.
Veronica, good morning.
It's
good morning, viewers at home.
Right. Now, organized labor and the federal government, it's good that they have reached an agreement that organized labor wouldn't go on strike. But let me begin with you, Sijibomi. When the NLC called for strike, of course, it is expected that they would agitate with regards to they are there to defend the average Nigerian worker. But what came to mind when you heard them decide that they were going to call for a strike with regards to the federal government's declaration that fuel subsidy was gone?
It's the normal Nigerian thing, and I just thought, is this the only way labor, is this the only instrument labor can use? Because when you overflog you use the same thing over and over again, it becomes less effective. Then if you look at the antecedents and the different sequence of events that led to it before elections and everything, labor was quiet. In terms of fighting for the masses, we had a situation before the election whereby there was cash crunch, there was cash confiscation, like some people would put it. Labor was silent. When we had issues with energy, there was no gasoline anywhere. Labor was silent. And it now came to a point whereby something that was inevitable, everybody knew about that this was going to happen at a point in time.
Absolutely.
And the previous government already said there was no budget for that. And almost all the presidential candidates before the election said that was what they were going to do. And one even said that was the first thing it was going to do. And Labour did not oppose or counter all those claims as at that time. They were quiet. So what changed? So the question was, what changed? So it was an issue of integrity, it was an issue of neutrality, it was an issue of common sense to the average and rational mind who doesn't want to take sides in terms of partisan politics. If you have to be objective, everybody knew that was the way to go. But how do we approach that bend? That was what was important, which Labour was supposed to go to the table, but they didn't. And
they initially went to the table with government and then decided that they were not going to continue conversation. It was TUC that continued the conversation with the federal government. At some point, that was on Sunday, Labour was visibly not present, talking about the NLC, was not present at that conversation until TUC went ahead to make demands from government. But then some have said that perhaps it is the approach with which governments decided to remove the fuel subsidy that made Labour insist, saying that they were going to go on strike. And although some other persons have said that Labour was being partisan, but they have come out to say now that they have seen, the way things are in the system. They've seen that the government is willing to have conversations with them. They are seeing that the government is ready to make palliatives readily available to cushion the effect, and so have decided to call off the strike, and so they also made demands. But when you look at Labour's handling of this matter with government, does it really mean that they were being partisan in their approach, as some have pointed out?
Yeah, of course. They are clearly partisan, and they are. Are we still going to say that also political? Because some versions say that the strike was declared in the church premises, which is not too good enough. Let's also make some clarification about Labour's approach. Since they say they have issue with the way the government handles the matter, I don't know the best time the government can announce or remind us of the remover than when it's making such historic speech. That's the best moment for him to do that. No, there shouldn't be a special session. But for Labour, when Pa Imodu was there, just like what my colleague here said, that the potency of strike, we have to re-examine it. When Paimodu, the former Labour leader, was there, when many leaders were there, they adopted this policy. And most of the time, the military guys were the one they were engaging with. And the civil society sat down with Labour and said that the last resort should be strike. Welfare responsibility is 50-50. Labour has a role to play, the government has a role to play. We formed what is called the Labour and Civil Society Coalition. Bafaya left and Oshiomhole came on board. So on all those 8 occasions that we had protests and there were strikes during Obasanjo time, Labour kept insisting that the best way they know how to do is to strike and protest. And we said no. So we broke away and we formed what is called JAF today, Joint Action for Nursing. The psychology of we are seeing in the military era is still what we have to persuade Labour to depart from. The role of Labour is also to understand the economic dynamics in the society to the extent that Labour must also go to town to establish the landing cost of all the essential goods of life and play their own role through the price control agencies. Why do we produce rice of bag 50 kg at 15,000 and it's sold for 35,000? So Labour has a role to play among the manufacturer association. It's not the government. Government is the last resort. So having established that, I understand that the bag of rice, the least they can sell it is 18,000 naira, produced at 15, sell it at 18. Why must landlord, house built 20 years ago, must put a flat? So Labour must first engage the private sector, must engage the owners of economy, which is the people first. The last resort is the government. So when you now come to government, you now engage the government, the private sector, and other agencies will then come together and then begin to debate what is the best salary do we fix up. But they didn't do that each time because that is too Herculean. And that's what Labour do all over the world. It's too Herculean. The low-hanging fruit for Labour to do agitation is to just to up to our economy and stay with strike. So we parted way to them. On subsidy too, government must not admit that it is their sole responsibility to give consolation, economic consolation to the people. They must not admit that the pandemic that is coming, to avert it, is only their role. This moment, and that is one of the challenges the government have, that you need to widen your horizon in solving problems. The moment you find ourselves that somebody is gone and there's a likelihood of economic crisis, you must engage all the private sectors. Give your staff this 6-month window period for recovery. Encourage them to give palliative to their staff. In the banking sector, from level 1 to 6, you must not palliative, not in terms of salary increase. For instance, the government can also give tax holiday to level 1 to 6. Increase in salary, the danger is what we kept pointing out, that it makes a nonsense of salary increase of 10 naira and then your expenditure. So this is what we've been telling Labour, that don't talk about salary increase. In fact, the first major people that local government has to talk to are private transport owners who do it for business. Engage them that if you are patriotic with government, we will not forget the role you are playing, because the government appears to be the only person talking about how to console us. And it's not. So the Labour, henceforth, we must insist that play your role first. Go out and talk to your unions. Tell them not to increase price. Tell another association not to increase price. Tell banks to do something for their staff. Tell every sector. And look at what government has done. The government can come to office 3 days in a week.
We'll come to that, Razaq. We need to quickly go on a break.
Oh, okay.
When we return, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us.
Every morning is an opportunity to take your hustle to the next level. Every morning is one day closer to your ambition. So, make every morning count. Cup after cup, morning after morning. Start strong, finish strong. Nescafe.
Every healthy family needs the right amount of energy to start their day, but sourcing for breakfast with a splendid blend of nutritious multigrains? Big wahala. With the new Kellogg's Gold Grain cereal, you don't have to go through all of that. it. So now, your mornings can look like this.
Go, 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 go grains. Love the goodness of its multigrains.
Grain Sets Go!
Also available in banana flavor.
Breakfast time is Kellogg's time.
Well, conversations going on behind the scenes still. But thank you for joining us. We've been looking at the matter of labor calling off the strike as well as the demands that they are making before government. And before we went on the break, Razaq, we were talking about the fact that government must admit that it alone cannot handle this matter of palliatives. And we're pointing at Kwara State asking workers that as against 5 working days, they have 3 days to come to the office. And then Edo State has stood the same line, telling workers as against 5 days, you have 3 days of coming to work. And they have even gone ahead to increase the salary of staffers from 30,000 naira to 40,000 naira. That's for Edo State now. And they are also looking at having virtual classrooms. We are seeing some state governments beginning to take certain steps, owning up to the reality and responsibility that they have to do something to cushion the effect on their citizens. Sijibomi. Yeah.
Yes, like you rightly said, palliatives are in different dimensions, and it doesn't have to be cash transfer, which is very, very obsolete. And let me just cite some examples. I think when the Western world were trying to introduce EV vehicles, because of climate change, bring down the carbon emission and all that. The Ontario government, I think so, did something. If you have a car, if you want to buy an EV, $1,000 was a discount, and it doesn't come to you in cash. The car producer discounts it, then your other car, your gasoline car, when you're taking it to be scrapped, you get another 1,000. The UK government will tell you, if you're using EV, you don't pay car tax for a period of time. The German government budgeted like 3.4 billion euros for that, given different, and these things, they don't come in cash. It's just discounts from different manufacturers and producers. Now, if the state government wants to parley with the federal government, what can we do? Apart from 3 days holiday, 2 days holiday, whereby you can work 3 days in a week, the private sector too must be encouraged to do such. In my own company, we're trying to do something like that now because COVID showed us that you can really work from home. And after COVID, we all got lessons, and all of a sudden, after 6 months, everybody went back to status quo. So what has changed? We were effective at that time, so we can be effective. Another thing is secondary schools, primary schools, levies. The state governments can scrap all that. When parents don't need to pay those monies, and certain days, maybe on Mondays, when there's free transportation for the kids, borne by the government, there are buses everywhere. These are things that are done not in Western world, but in neighboring countries, African countries, that we can emulate. So it doesn't have to be cash transfer of 5,000 to people. That's one person will just come up with fictitious names and claim 100 people. So there are so many approaches to these things. We just need to think outside the box. I want to commend the governments of Edo State and Kwara State. They've started something laudable. What are other states doing? So those are the lines I think we should think outside the box, get good approach to all these things, and give people discounts. You can even have, now we can see that the cost of LPG is coming down. Some things will definitely come down.
Those are one of the things that they are asking, they tabled before government, that there was a CNG agreement, talking about the compressed natural gas agreement that they had in 2021. They're asking government to revisit that, especially we were looking at converting some automobiles for gas. Instead of using petrol, that should be used for gas. But then we see that plan hasn't come into fruition, so to speak. All right?
It will. And you see, we must encourage governments to look in this direction. If you don't ascertain the capacity of your government. That is the greatest disservice the people can do to that country. At the moment, the capacity of the government cannot carry the pandemic that may likely come up, because it's a pandemic because the crisis of subsidy removal is not being felt by Nigerians alone. So once it's felt outside, it becomes a pandemic. That's the definition of pandemic, as you all know, and everybody at home knows this too. We have to design this model and encourage the government to toe the line. So also, there are other organized groups that the government must also seek for the services. I'm talking about the civil society organizations. You have to also engage them in explaining to the people the roles all of us must play. There are people, there are institutions that will not trust persuasion from the government, but they will trust persuasion from the labor, the civil society, the religious houses. So government must begin to invite all these sectors one after the other to assist. It's just a 6-month window period, in my own estimation. It will filter away. So, like I said, after that 6-month window period, we will recover again and we're back on track. And that is the direction labor is not looking at. You will sit down in your office. You will not want to do things your colleagues all over the world do. You will still be adopting Payemodu style, Sijibomi style, Bafia style, military era, where we all know that the coming to power of military is by question. So we left them without borrowing any idea. Sort it out yourself. And that was why you see this method of trying to crumble the economy by the NLC, by the TUC, by ASU during the military. And that is what was transferred to democratic institutions that we are today. And that is why they have refused to admit that their role at the beginning of taking care of welfare of the staff begins with them. And like we have explained, we have explained this to labor day in, day out. In fact, to the extent that we said that the economic model will operate in Nigeria that gives too much concentration of resources of this. They say it's not their business. They say it's just talk to government. I say, why can't, even ASU. We explain to ASU that you have to carry some legislation. And they get angry. When we engage the civil society, they get angry. They say, why? As if they are not the same people that criticize government. I've not had any minister slapping an LSE chairman before. But when you engage them, they get angry. They say, why are you supporting the government? I say, we are not supporting the government. We are telling you to do the news. So on this note too, we are telling our government to also explain the responsibility of labor to them. I can't be the one doing the talking. I can't be the one that is, and the people must also know the danger of insisting that the government must sort out the subsidy crisis. The guys that are benefiting from the subsidy as weaponize it, they turn it into phobia. That if you want to remove it, they quickly start the propaganda against it. Such that the expected sacrifice we expect from the people, because it's going to come with some pain. Nigeria don't want to listen to it. They weaponize it. No, it's too painful, you can't do that. They subsidize agriculture, they subsidize. So for Nigeria who wants to be patriotic, who want to understand the pain that comes with the removal, they will say, see, no.
It's difficult for them to understand.
It's because it's only coming from the government. Get trusted institutions too. You have to persuade the labor to be part of it. So I are telling our colleagues now, our comrades, that you cannot be sitting in your chair all the time, rocking, and be declaring a strike. It's your duty as well.
They have come out to explain that government is going to bring up palliatives to cushion the effect.
Their definition of palliative is salary increase. And that should come later. And like I've explained to you that the danger of first looking at that alternative is that it's always made the nonsense of the salary increase. What you need to do with your money should be what you should address. When you go to office, you pay the same fee. When you want to pay school fees, when your rent has not increased, when in your office, the federal government gives you a 6-month tax holiday. These are things you spend your money on. And you discover that it has not increased. So, but if the government don't talk to you, you will not be willing to talk to government. If government don't talk to landlords, I will increase my rent. If you don't talk to transport owners, that there's a price for you also to pay in nation building.
But transporters will tell you that they are buying the fuel at the new price.
And that is the missing link. The first thing you must let all of us understand, there must be a price we will all pay if we have to come out of this together. If you are not willing to pay a price, that means you are not getting it right. There must be a price. I am not saying that you should buy fuel of 20 naira and make 10 naira with it. If it is possible, and part of the explanation the government will offer is promises. That is why you see some sectors in the rest of the world, they will say that this sector is very patriotic to Nigeria. And you see Nigerians offering support, maybe it may be telecoms. When telecoms in America, when the racket was broken, Americans were happy. So any policy that favors telecoms in America, Americans are happy about it. So on this note too, any sector that plays a role that gives consolation to Nigeria, we must not forget them. Any policy that makes them happy back too. And that is kind of promise the government will make, that in your sector, this is what I'm going to roll out for you if I'm coming out of this. If you support me to come out of this crisis, I'm going to do those other things for you. So it's not about looking for money to borrow, to increase the salary of workers. That is not what we should be looking at the moment.
So you're not in support of the 200,000 increment that they are talking about?
That's not possible.
For what? For what?
Salary.
Salary increase. The danger is what I've explained to you. So that's the danger.
I want to also talk about...
It's a step forward and 10 steps backward. You take a step forward and you take 10 steps backward.
You say it's not possible.
You know,
why do you think it's not possible?
Even as of now, the government doesn't have enough money to pay for salaries and do every of their responsibilities. So you increase from a 30,000 to a 200,000. How many percent increase is that? So it's not possible for us to even. That means we're creating another problem. Every other thing skyrockets because when they hear the 200,000, everybody, inflates hikes their prices and.